How's it going, everybody? Tim Kosch here, Bobby Stover there. Big weekend of football last week and a bigger one ahead this week. Bobby, why don't you run us down from last week in Arizona's big win over Stanford? What impressed you? Who impressed you? Tell us about it.
All right, so what I saw after last weekend, I was really impressed by. Even though most of the game, Nick Grigsby really wasn't a factor. You saw the sore shoulder, but he really came up big in the end. Had a huge long run at the end on a 3rd and 17. Really broke the game open. For me, biggest play of the game, biggest player of the game. But obviously Foles, somebody else that people have talked a lot about. Again.
No, it certainly was a big play for Nick Grigsby to make that. It was the game winner, and it changed the focus of everybody. Stanford was playing the pass. There was a run, 57 yards to the end zone and for the win. But like you said, I was impressed with Nick Foles. 40 of 51, 415 yards, 3 touchdowns. It was really just an unbelievable game, especially when you consider he's a sophomore, and that was his 3rd career start. I was very impressed. I don't know what's more impressive, though, the fact that Nick Foles was so good or the fact that you and I wore the same colored shirt today. But anyway, moving on. Moving forward to UCLA this weekend. Not that good of an offense, but they have a solid defense. Bobby, what are your biggest concerns for the game for Arizona this week?
I think the biggest concern for me coming out of that last game was really the defense. I think we could all agree that the defense looked absolutely pitiful. For most of the game, the defensive back specifically really struggled. Trevin Wade, after the game, just looked really dejected, acted really dejected. Even though he came up big there with the last catch at the very end, he, for most of the game, just let the Stanford offense sort of find wide open receivers all along the field. Now, that's something against UCLA, not exactly the most high-powered offense, but to be successful this week and on, for me, that's my biggest concern is will this defense, specifically the secondary, be able to pick up the pace?
No, I absolutely agree with you. It's not like Arizona's defense only made one mistake throughout the game. Sure, it seemed like the safeties were out of place, and I'm sure they were on several plays, especially those long touchdown passes, but the defense is a unit. All 11 guys have to make plays every single play. Now, it's foolish to think that they're all going to be perfect on every play, but they have to play as a unit more, especially this week against a team that has been struggling on offense. I think this is a good chance for Arizona and their defense to get back in order. Now, if you remember, at the beginning of the season, it was said that the offense was going to struggle while the defense carried the team. They started off pretty well in the first 2 weeks, but in the last 4 weeks, they've given up 27, 32, 36, and 38 points. Not what you want to see out of your defense. Now, there is some good news outside of the defense for Arizona football. They were ranked in the BCS this week for the first time since 1998, coming in at number 22. Bobby, what are your thoughts on that?
And number 22 in the nation, I think we were all very surprised when that stat came out. But, something that's really intriguing to me is sort of the dynamic. You can look at it in 2 ways. You can really look at it from a standpoint of, well, Arizona does have a big tough strength of schedule. They played Iowa, who's now top 10 in the BCS, with only a 10-point game on their turf. But from a different standpoint, the one I agree with, I don't think they really belong in the BCS. I think if you look at any other poll in this country, they're not in the top 25. Should they be in the BCS? But hey, Mike Stoops is now ahead of Bob Stoops. I think that's the most interesting thing we got out of all
that. That is pretty interesting, and I can tell you it's never happened before. I think where you were going with the whole regular polls as opposed to the BCS is strictly based on computers and strength of schedule, which Arizona is actually very high in. They play the 3rd toughest schedule in the country right now. And I think with the AP Top 25, USA Today, stuff like that, what happens is basically there are 119 Division I teams, and not everyone is going to get the proper coverage. So you have schools like Arizona who have good players, good teams, but they fall in the shadows of USC and Oregon and the other power conferences. So it takes them a while to crack the top 10. Had they defeated Washington or obviously Iowa, they'd not only be in the top 25 in every poll, but they'd be pretty high up. But they didn't. So that's a week away. This is a great step for Arizona, though, to be ranked in the BCS.
What does it take, Arizona, from your perspective, to stay in this top 22 and to move forward? Do you predict that they will be able to do that?
Well, they'll be able to do it for at least the next 2 weeks because they play UCLA, who's an easy win, and then Washington State, who's an even easier win. I think this 3-game stretch, which started with Stanford, was the most important part. If they could go 3-0 against Stanford, UCLA, and Washington State, that puts them at 6-2, which is a great place to be, especially for Arizona football, entering the final 4 games, which are Cal, Oregon, Arizona State, and USC, 3 of which are the 3 best teams in the conference, technically outside of Arizona. And then, of course, ASU is just a rivalry, and you can never predict who's going to win that game. So I think if they could enter that Cal game at 6-2, and then come out of that 4-game stretch 3-1, finish the season at 9-3, which would be by far the best season Arizona's had in a long time, then I think Arizona not only is good for this year, but they're set for next year and the year after that. But anyway, that's in the past. Only place to go is to move forward. So, Bobby, I'm curious, what's your prediction for the UCLA game this week?
Predictions this week, I think it's pretty easy. UCLA has not been playing well. They got Rick Neuheisel, who, being from Colorado and seeing him throughout his whole little issue there at Colorado, I'm not a big fan. So, and he really hasn't proved anything here at UCLA either. So, the one thing they might stop Arizona at is they do have a decent pass defense, and Nick Foles isn't going to be able to throw for 500 yards of offense every week. So, I predict not quite as high scoring of a game, but I still think Arizona is going to cruise to an easy win. And I can't give a score, but I'm going to say about a 20-point spread on that.
All right, that sounds like a pretty easy win right there. I think for me, this is a big game for Arizona, not just as a statement, but as a growing experience. I think despite UCLA being extremely talented and deep on defense, their offense has struggled, which has really confused me because Rick Neuheisel is an offensive genius and mastermind back there. They have talent. There's no reason for them to be struggling. My biggest fear is that they finally break out of that shell against Arizona and explode onto the scene, but I don't think that's going to happen this week. I think Arizona takes care of business in a game, unlike the last 2 weeks where they snuck around and snuck out at the end. I think they take control of this one early and they never let go. I'm looking for 38-14 in this one. Any last words for us, Bobby, or are we out of here?
I'm just got one thing to say to the fans that were at the game last weekend. A couple things that sort of disappointed me last weekend. First, I think it was in the second quarter, there was a big inflatable penis that I don't think anybody could miss. We got to talk about that. I mean, what is it, 3 to 1 girl to guy ratio at this school, and they were throwing around inflatable dicks around the student section. Come on, we both noted that. And second, end of the third quarter, about half that student section was gone. So this week, even Mike Stoops mentioned that after the game. This needs to be improved, for this team to do well, especially get that home field advantage. So stick around during this game. We need it.
The only comment I'll have about that is that I heard the object you mentioned is currently in your room right now. So anyway, we'll see you next week, everybody. Go Arizona.
All right.